We are speaking with singer-songwriter Bruce Sudano. The new one coming out October 1st is Ode to a Nightingale, and as we say here in Montreal, bonjour. How are you?
Très bien. Et vous?
Très très bien, actually, very
Ah,
well.
good.
So much to talk about because you put out Spirals Volume 1 last year and Spirals Volume 2.
Yeah.
You have been on a crazy stretch of just writing. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Is it pandemic driven? Is it creative driven? Is it pandemic meets creative? What are we?
Uh, it's really creative driven, and it's kind of in a role that I've been on for a number of years. This incarnation of Bruce Sudano, singer songwriter. I have a long music history in the music business, but
Yep.
in 2012, my wife of 32 years passed away, and it was a moment where writing basically centered me, saved me in some kind of way.
Yep. By the
Uh,
way, I just want to say, I know Donna Summers passed away, and so I got goosebumps because I loved her. She was great, and
yes,
just you bring it. Look, I mean, you can see that. It's
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
much respect to her. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, she was the greatest,
Yep.
she was a great, obviously a great artist, a great singer, a great songwriter, a great entertainer, but also, an even better human being and a great mother to our kids. And
Yep.
so, yeah, she was one of a kind. I've
Yep.
met a lot of people and there was nobody like her. But
Yes, indeed.
anyway,
Yep.
Ode to a Nightingale. So anyway, so back then in 2012 was when I kind of had to, because at some point in time I focused on being a songwriter because
Hmm.
Donna had her career, we had kids, and so and being a songwriter was always my number one, thing that. Even though I spent all of my life playing in different bands and with Donna and all that. So anyway, here I am. I'm emotionally driven because of what went on in my life. So I did a number of CDs that took me out of this period of hurt and loss, and it kind of transitioned into me falling back in love again and meeting a new woman and uh, remarrying and at the same time discovering this person of voice and guitar and song, uh, and evolving that back up. And so the new record kind of is it's kind of like the latest incarnation of
Right.
that initial fire. um, and even myself, I wonder if and when uh, it peters out. But I've been blessed to be this creative. I didn't anticipate it this far down the line in my life. It's a beautiful thing to be able to continue to evolve and develop and
Yep.
like that.
Well, let me ask you about evolving and development, and I'm gonna make reference to two songs that you wrote way back when. You of course wrote the number one disco song, "Bad Girls," or you co-wrote,
Co-wrote it. Yep. Yep.
and you wrote the number one country song, "Starting Over Again," that Dolly Parton did.
Yeah.
How do you approach songwriting? Because to me, writing a disco song is different than writing a country song, but is it all just sort of the same thing and it's really just down to the interpretation?
Uh, I mean that could be a big part of it.
Right.
But what I do Bad Girls live now, just me and the acoustic guitar,
Yeah.
and that's how the song was written.
Right.
Um, uh,
Really?
uh,
Wait. It was written just acoustic and guitar?
yeah, yeah,
You know, a lot of artists, including Brian Adams, who's a Canadian, has said that a great song starts either on a piano and a vocal or an
yeah.
acoustic guitar and a vocal, and that's why that works.
Yeah, no, no, without a doubt. Another thing that I sometimes do, just to add to Brian's position, which I agree with, is sometimes even if it's an up-tempo song, I will slow it down just to translate it that way. It almost puts it under more of a microscope in terms of viewing your song and analyzing what you're doing. But anyway, so to your point about songwriting, yeah, I write with an acoustic guitar or a piano, and that's how it's always been. Starting over again was written on a piano, but the thing that they have in common is that they're story songs.
Right.
And as a songwriter, that's a big part of how I work. I have trouble when I get to the lighter fare but anyway, so yeah, acoustic guitar, piano, it's an emotion, it's a story, it's a message, and translating it. So when I do it on acoustic guitar, Bad Girls, it breaks down much more bluesy.
Right.
I mean, to me, it's a Brooklyn R&B song. I mean, and it got translated in the moment as. I mean, it was a #1 R&B song as well, but at the moment, it was all about disco in 1979, and that's how that song, lives. Yeah.
And what a great song. And I'm just thinking, I'm speaking to the writer of Bad Girls this afternoon. And this morning I spoke to the guy who sung You Make Me Feel Like Dancing. So I'm having a complete disco day.
Yeah.
When we get to Ode to a Nightingale and Spirals Volume 1, Spirals Volume 2, and the other stuff that you've done in the last 8-9 years, is the songwriting process the same? I mean, do you write the same as you did when you were a young whippersnapper in the 70s, or have you completely changed it? Do you sort of pull it apart differently? What's
Yeah, no, again, to use the word evolution again,
right.
It's an evolution, and for me, it typically starts with the inspiration of a seed of something that I get, that I feel, it resonates in me. I get that feeling, and I work through that, and I try to capture as much of the initial inspiration, and then the process comes down to, okay, what am I really trying to say? I don't want to be cliche. I want to keep it special. I want to keep it unique to my voice, because now I'm translating everything that I write through my voice. So that has its own strengths and weaknesses, and so that's also kind of shaping. I think that may be one difference, because in the past, a lot of songs that I wrote or co-wrote, I was writing beyond my voice.
Do you have to think of voice when you're writing? I mean, you have to think, okay, Donna's going to sing it this way. She has this kind of inflection.
No, I don't. Not with
or Dolly or anybody else.
Yeah, not with what I would call the natural born singers. Donna was a natural born singer. There was no limitation on what she could do. She could, she could interpret it this way. She could interpret it that way. And for her, it was really about how to separate those interpretations, and that she did by who's the character in this song, and what person is singing this song. So that would dictate for me what I because of the constraints of my voice. I'm being a singer, I'm not a natural born singer. I am somebody who is still evolving even as a singer, and understanding how to sing and what complements my voice, and who, and incorporating, as I continue to grow, and, but melodically, a part of how I research what I'm writing is where is it comfortable for my voice, and melodically, is this suiting my voice, and am I still communicating the emotion, and is it connecting, so I don't know if that answers the question, but
It does. Now, let me ask you real quick, again, back from the day here, because you were part of the Casablanca Records family.
yes, I was in a band called Brooklyn Dreams. We were a trio
Yeah.
with Joe Bean Esposito and Eddie Hoganson, and we did 4 albums as the Brooklyn Dreams. Yeah.
So I just want to. I'm very curious about that because obviously the disco stuff is there, but Casablanca was the home to Kiss, and Neil Bogart sort of gambled a house on Kiss being popular, and it didn't really pan out at the beginning, and then it hit. What was Neil like in terms of a record company president, in terms of a guy who was supporting his bands? I mean, did he come to the shows and pat you on the back and make sure you were taken care of? Talk to me a little bit about Neil.
Um, Neil Bogart was a great record man.
Okay.
He was an individual. He was kind of like the last of the entrepreneurial, visionary,
Right.
little label guys. Back in the day, there were many individual labels with people at the head who were inspirational and visionary, and and Neil had a lot of creative energy, and he was a believer.
Right.
And if he believed, there was no mountain too high, there was no wall too thick, there was no depth too deep. There's got to be a way, because I believe in this, and I believe in it because it's great. And it was always and he was a great marketing guy at the same time, because he built images. He put images around the artist. I think, as it applies to the Brooklyn Dreams, it's like that was part of the problem with why I believe we didn't succeed bigger than we did. The first Brooklyn Dreams album was more of an R&B record, and it was on a label called Millennium.
Right.
And what happened there was, after that first album, Donna and I and the Brooklyn Dreams were all hanging together at that point, and I think Neil, and the first Brooklyn Dreams album came out to much critical acclaim and a couple of chart records. And I think Neil got nervous about the relationship with me and Donna, and then found a way to buy our contract from Millennium. And now we were on Casablanca, and we were expected to be disco, which, we really weren't. We were, 3 singer-songwriters who grew up on, Sam and Dave and the Rolling Stones. So here we were, and we were kind of a little bit like fish out of water, and so I'm getting back to the identity thing of what he could build around the artist. I think, we missed with that, but he certainly nailed it with Kiss and with Donna, and it was really Donna, it was really Donna who basically saved the label,
That's an interesting take. Let me hear that, because we all talk about, oh, Kiss Alive became a big, massive thing and saved the label, but it's Donna that saved the label.
In my opinion,
okay,
it was Donna that saved the label and allowed, not, of course, Kiss was huge as well. It's right around the same time period, but it was really Donna. Donna was selling a lot of records.
Yes, she was.
And
little kid in Montreal heard them. I can tell you that much.
4 consecutive double albums.
Platinum, nonstop.
Yeah. So.
What was the vibe like back then for you as a musician? Because you said you're a singer-songwriter. They try to turn you into a disco guy, and you're like, I'm not a disco guy. And then at the corner of your eye, you see these four guys in makeup. Were you thinking, wow, this is the 70s and this is wild and crazy and it's fun? Or were you thinking, what the hell is that? And why am I singing disco?
No, it was a very exciting time,
I can imagine.
you know, we were all going very fast,
Yeah.
uh, not in a bad way, in a good way, because when you know you have those moments, um, it's all the way live. Plus, you know, so but you got to go with it, you know, to a point, you know, and this is always the tricky part is how do you transition, you know, out of that, and how do you maintain a life and a career
Right.
for the long haul, you know, without becoming a casualty, you know, because it is really intense, you know, you know, Brooklyn Dreams got to take that ride under Donna's wing because we toured together and you know, we wrote together and you know, obviously at some point she and I got married.
Yep.
But I have only good memories of it. You know, it was part of you know, a very exciting journey that I've
It was a
lived.
great scene. I mean, the
You
70s and
know,
80s were a great music scene. Let me ask you
you know,
this. In terms of making records, because now, you know, now if I give Bad Girls to the local pop kid, it's going to be Pro Tool and it's going to be samples and it's going to... When you and Brooklyn Dreams and you know, starting over with Dolly Parton, and how did you record organically? Did you get all those sort of disco sounds with real players, or were there some kind of studio trick? That, because I mean, obviously you didn't have Pro Tools.
no, you know, all those records were real players. It
Wow,
really wasn't until
what an art! I mean, we don't do that anymore.
yeah, well,
I mean, we
you
do it
know,
differently. Let's put it that way.
yeah, well, very much so in one way. But you know, but my roots are, you know, I co-wrote my first chart record in 1969 with Tommy James for Tommy James and the
And the
Shondells.
Shondells, yeah.
You know, and he was the first guy that brought me into a recording studio when I was still in my teens, and you know, you know, it was 8 tracks, you know, and that was a big leap from the 4 tracks, you know,
Right.
and
That was
but
cutting edge technology.
yeah, but even there, it was guys playing in the studio, and you know, obviously there was no computers then, or
No.
you know, and so even when we did Brooklyn Dreams albums and those Donna Summer albums, you know, through Bad Girls, it was, you know, of course there's I Feel Love, and that kind of began to change that picture, you know, oddly enough.
Right.
But it was typically, you know, bass guitar, drums, keys, and then you know, as in the disco realm of things, in those days we would overdub,
Right.
you know, synth sounds, you know, and the synth programming, even if it was foundational, was limited. You know, it was generally real players. You know, coming out of, you know, those Donna records, it was rhythm sections, strings, and horns. I mean, Once
Wow.
Upon a Time, Enough Is Enough, Last Dance. That there's no synths. You know, that's pre-synth stuff.
Wow.
Same thing with the early Brooklyn Dreams albums. It's all, you know, it's really not until you start getting into after I Feel Love and things evolved into, you know, the beginning of the 80s that it became more and more computer driven and like that.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think. Imagine Mutt Lang, producer Mutt Lang, in a day of
Yeah.
8 track. He wouldn't know what to do. The poor guy wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, but he would have been great with 8 track because he's just, you know,
He's a genius.
it's really about the mind and the creative mind and the freedom to use the tools that you have and taking the time and care and interest to play around with them.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, so yeah, so
Uh,
Mutt would be great in
in
any
any era. No, I agree.
my
I
opinion.
love Mutt. You
Yeah,
know, Foreigner 4, Back in Black, Def Leppard, Hysteria. I mean, you're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
complain?
yeah, yeah.
uh,
I'll even take Shania Twain. Some great
oh
records
yeah,
there. Yeah,
no,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Nickelback too. Let's not
yeah,
forget he did
yeah,
Dark Horse.
yeah,
When you get to Ode to a Nightingale, what
yeah.
is your recording process? Do you like the sort of let's get a band in here and let's get me in here and do this, or do you use a little bit of modern magic?
I like it all depending on the circumstance.
Okay.
So for this particular record, it's COVID times. I'm living in Milan, and I have, this room, that's my, creative room. And I go in there and I have a Pro Tools and I have a guitar. And again, I'm writing on the acoustic guitar. And I get the song. And so what I did with this, because of this situation, Spirals Volume 2 was a mix of in the studio, was mostly in the studio. Spirals Volume 1 was all in the studio, Shelter Island Sound in New York, produced by Steve Adabo.
Yeah.
But COVID time, different constraint, but still the tools to do it with, luckily enough. And so I basically put all my guitar parts down, did all my vocals, did all my harmonies, set the tempo, played some keys on some of them, and sent that all to my producer in LA, Randy Ray Mitchell, who's produced, most of Spirals Volume 2, and I've worked with him for a long time. He's a great producer and an amazing guitarist in his own right. He was Donna's guitarist for many years. We played together for a long time. Anyway, so sent it all to Randy in LA. He puts on guitars and bass, and we kind of go back and forth about who should play bass on this and whatever. And the same with the drums, who's the right drummer for this. Then he would overdub the drums in his studio, send it to me, and back and forth that way until I came back to LA in April, stayed for a month, and we mixed the record together. And so, that's what this demanded. And like I said, I like to use the tools that are at hand, is kind of my philosophy.
And I'll end on this. We've had, this, like we said, this consecutive or this great output. Mm-hmm. Is this the period at the end of the output, or is this just sort of part of you're still on the train here and we're still moving? Like, do you see yourself out with a new one in early 2022? I mean, are we still, are the creative juices still flowing?
I don't know the answer to that at this point. Once, for me anyway, once I finish a project, I like to, it becomes a different phase of it. I'm talking to people like you. I'm, visiting my grandkids, and I think part of my process is living so that I can write. Keep living, keep writing. For me, it's I got to find those sparks that are doing it. So I anticipate continuing. I anticipate a phase of going around and playing and coming to places like Montreal and doing a night or two and doing a little pocket of Canadian gigs and, a UK little run. And also at the same time, I'm thinking about, because most of my life is LA, Milan, of having an LA based band and an Italian based band and doing residencies for periods of time, because I miss playing. That what the one emotion that I'm left with right now more than anything through the COVID period is I miss playing with other people.
I miss going to shows. I haven't been to a show since March of 2020. So
and I have enough of a song base now to really draw from, and I've done enough playing by myself to have an understanding of who I am on stage and what I'm bringing and what that is, and I'm excited to expand it musically with other players and all of the above. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, bro.
Bruce Sudano, Ode to a Nightingale, out October 1st. And as we say in Montreal, merci. Absolutely, an absolute pleasure today. We got some great stories. And
great, man.
Thank you for
I
that.
had a good time too. We'll do it again in the future. And
Absolutely.
I'll see you in Montreal in some little club.
Yes, you will. And you let me know, and I'll make sure to promote it too.
Will do. Thanks, brother.
You, sir.
Ciao.
Cheers. Bye-bye now.